Aloha and welcome to another video. We're going to be going over project 4.2, the Meteor flowing light. And the reason why it's called Meteor flowing light is we're going to use that LED bar graph. And instead of just doing them one line at a time, we're going to do different intensities. So as we go along the way from one to the next, we're going to have a little bit of a trailing, almost like a comet, like a meteor. So we're going to have a bright light, and then behind it, we're going to have a lighter one and then a lighter one, depending on where it is. So it's easier to understand once you see it. Once you see it, you'll kind of get it. But we're using the concept of the pulse width modulation to get those different frequencies, the different brightnesses on each part of the LED bar graph. So the way we're going to set this up is exactly like we did it a couple of lessons back. So it's a little bit of a heartbreaker that you've got to take all the stuff from the last lesson off of it and rewire it just like before. So you're going to get this. This is the one that a lot of people had trouble with. So you're going to have to really be careful here. Make sure you get all of your different, jumper wires going to the right positions. Go ahead and get your 220 ohm resistors going over here too into the ground line from the negative side. But one thing I want to point out is if you don't see it lighting up, unplug it and flip it around 180 degrees, and it's a good chance that's what's going to fix it. But make sure when you go to do that, you unplug your power. You don't want to do that while it's still alive. So anyway, go and put your jumper in here from ground to the ground rail, and then take your 220 ohm resistors and put them from the ground rail over onto the other side of the LEDs here. And then on the other side, we're going to run the jumper wires over to the different pins that are going to give it power. So go ahead and set that up. It's the same thing that we did a couple lessons back. And yeah, that'll take you a little while. But after you've finished with that, we'll continue on in the lesson. We're going to look at the code here. The code is a little bit hard to follow, but it does what it's supposed to. There is one thing that we'll have to do, and I'll explain this in a minute. It gives the example of what to do with Thonny. It wants you to move the pwm.py module onto Thonny, because when we go to run this code, normally it's just going to run it on our Thonny, or I mean, what am I saying? It's going to run it on our microprocessor, the Pico. But when it runs it, it's going to try to import this module. So the module needs to be on the device itself. So we're going to have to go ahead and move it onto there. So they give you instructions here on how to do it with Thonny. And I'll show you in a minute with VS Code how to go about doing that. So let's look at the code itself. So the code, let's dig down into it. Okay, so here's the import. We're importing my PWN. That's the module. The module itself, it's essentially when you call it up and set up the object right here, you're just telling it what pins you're going to be using as the PWM pins, and it's going to set up an object for you. And then that's what we do here. Essentially, we set it up with the following pins. Then we say the channels that we're going to have are going to be 0 through 9. So we're going to have 10 channels there for each pin on the thing. And we're going to say that the duty cycles are going to go like this. So we have a bunch of nothings, then we have the bright, then dimming, 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 all the way down to nothingness, and then all the zeros. So they've done the calculations to figure out, what would, what order do you need it to make it look like the meteor? So we go, the next line, we're doing a my own, or my PWM, which is the set, that we set, the object we set up just before. We're going to write to it. And by writing it, we're going to tell it what channel we're doing. So we're going to say the channel of J, which is the outer loop here, or no, the inner loop. So we're going from 0 through 10. And then we're going to do the duties here, and we're going to add the I, which is the outer loop, the 0 through 20, and we're going to add it to the inner loop, which is 0 through 10. So we're going to have it. So when you add a number 0 through 20 and 0 through 10, you're going to get something 0 through 30. So it'll take one of these duty values 0 through 30, And those are set up in a very tricky way in order to get the graphic to look just like it wants to. You can go through it, step by step to see how that's going to go. I won't get into that here. It's a little bit too detailed for this time of the night. So anyway, just know that by using these values here, they've set it up so that the intensity of the glow is going to be different at each step. So that's what the whole nesting of the loops is doing. It's going to be looping over your different pins, and it's going to be setting an intensity that's a combination of different values here. So anyway, that's what it does. And I'll show you real quick how to move your, and this is where it gets into that, explaining what it's going to look like and the intensities and stuff. So it's going to tell you how to import that custom module. So this is the Thonny explanation. I'll show you the VS way in just a second. Actually, let's go ahead and do it now. So in VS Code, just open up the folder that has both your files, your 04.2 flowing light and your PWM. Then when you go into PWM, go up to View and Command Palette, and you will look for MicroPico upload current file to Pico isn't going to come up first, so type in MicroPico. And I think this is towards the end of your list. I just ran it recently, so it's going to be at the top of my list, but you want to upload current file to Pico. And when you do that, it's going to push that into Pico so that when you subsequently run this file right here, when you run this, it will be able to find import in where it expects it to, which is from the Pico, not on the computer's local. If you do not upload this, you're going to find yourself getting an error. It's going to tell you that it can't find PWM. And that's because it's not located on your microprocessor on the Pico W. So go ahead and simply go up here to View, Command Palette, and type in MicroPico, upload current file to Pico. Once you do that, it'll move it there and you can run this. So then let me go ahead and switch my view here. So I'll stop the share. And this is what our previous really messy setup was. And if I go ahead and run, we will see that it runs through the different things. But here's what I'm talking about with the Meteor. So the head one is the brightest. That's going to be your brightest. And then you have different gradations of it after it. So it's going to look like it's, a meteor, flowing, one way versus the, one way to the next. So it's a pretty neat little effect, and it's done through that that technique we called pulse width modulation, where we use the different pulse widths to increase or decrease the intensity that's going to those LEDs. And this LED, this just works as 10, inline LEDs, just like a regular LED would. But yeah, you can get some neat little effects like this with it. So I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope it's been a learning experience. It really all comes down to understanding PWM. So look that up, watch the video I posted in the previous videos, text down below, and check that out for better explanations of pulse width modulation. And I will see you in the next lesson.